So one of the big problems that, we're all facing these days is anxiety. Anxiety is affecting not only our jobs, it affects our sleep, it affects our personal relationships. If you're a young man like I am, there are situations where if you have anxiety, it actually can cause your intimate partner, your woman, to kind of look at you a little bit differently and start to act a little bit differently. And like it did in my last relationship, it actually caused the relationship to, well, not cause it, but it was one of the reasons that kind of led, to the downfall. And it is this anxiety or this almost living emotionally and like reacting to things rather than living intentionally and responding with intention that is kind of getting us in trouble. So this video is going to be about how to live intentionally and how to train our bodies to respond with intention to situations rather than living so reactionary. I'm going to cover some primers on threat and how threat is like the cause of all anxiety. Going to cover emotions and going to get a little bit of an understanding of how understanding our emotions more deeply is going to help us understand where our efforts need to go and what we can pay attention to build a little bit of self-awareness so that we can start to strengthen, our understanding and our self-awareness and, begin to build up from there. And then I'll also give a couple of exercises that I've personally been doing that have really helped me. I mean, this is just anecdotally, like this is just what it feels like to me, but at least these exercises are good to separate oneself from the present moment. So you can kind of analyze what's going on. You can think about what's going on and you can react or you can respond with more intention rather than being so reactive. So without further ado, let's get into it. So the idea here is that threat is the number one cause of all anxiety. It is, let's say you're talking to your boss and there's a moment, you feel like you may be fired or something. There is that threat to your income, that threat to your job, and potentially even the threat of this person's opinion of you. There's a lot at stake and that can cause anxiety. Another example, let's say you're a young man and you're talking to your girlfriend, if you like there are certain cases when disagreeing with her is actually going to be really important, right? It's not great to always just kind of agree or go along with things. And you have to set boundaries. You have to say this is who I am and essentially you just have to be okay with it, within reason, this is who I am. And not being negative there, but it's like saying those things, setting those boundaries can actually cause anxiety because there is the threat, the potential of your intimate partner leaving you. There are many different examples of this type of thing, and it is this idea of threat, which is like the number one thing that causes anxiety. And if we don't know how to respond intentionally, if we just take these threats and we react emotionally, these can cause a number of like dysfunctional, behaviors, like hiding, closing ourselves off, shutting ourselves, down, leaving social situations, playing the victim, blaming other people, distracting ourselves, being defensive. All of these things are emotional, essentially anxiety. They're like short-term anxiety solutions, and they really don't solve the real underlying issue, and they just kind of mask the issue. So this is the fundamental role of threat with anxiety. Okay, and so now that we have a better idea of of what threat is and threat's role in creating these anxious feelings that we have, it's important now to discuss emotions on kind of just a surface level. Not going to go too deep into them, and I'm really just going to cover three in this video. I'm going to cover fear, I'm going to cover sadness, and I'm going to cover shame, right? And so it ultimately at the end of the day, it's fear, which is the ultimate underlying emotion. But I'm going to go into the other ones because I think it's going to be very helpful, and it was really helpful for me, developing my own relationship or a deeper relationship with my emotions. And it is this relationship with your emotions that's going to enable you to be able to identify how you're feeling, identify where these threats are coming from, and either communicate that in a healthy way to the other person or to deal with them internally by doing some of these exercises that I'll discuss in a little bit later. So the first emotion that I want to cover is fear. So, fear fundamentally is the mind's resistance to something uncomfortable that it doesn't want to happen. Let's say you are in a relationship and your girlfriend comes up to you or your boyfriend comes up to you and they're saying something that you don't really like. Maybe they're saying something that you've done and it's really caused them some grief. And they're like, hey, this is actually really important to me. I don't like this. What the hell? You know, we can become some of us can become afraid of, potentially that relationship ending. And if the relationship was going great and all of a sudden now, it's not going so great, the mind has this resistance to this potential outcome that it doesn't want to happen. It's this reaction that can cause us, somebody comes up to us and they say, hey, I don't like the way you did this. This can cause us to blame others, to point fingers, to hide, to react like, impulsively, to just kind of yell something or say something, and it is when we feel this fear where we kind of stop being so intentional and we kind of become a little bit less of who we are, and we just become emotional. We can lash out sometimes. And so it is understanding where and when you feel this fear is going to be really important. So how can we overcome? How can we rise above this fear? This is kind of a tough one, but essentially the thing to do is to surrender to the possibility that you don't want, right? Let's say there's something, your boss comes up to you and you may get fired. Like, ultimately, at the end of the day, you may get fired. People get fired every day. We may get fired. And so the idea is that if we can surrender to it and, in a way, accept what may happen, the fear kind of loses a little bit of its strength. And at the end of the day, realistically, it's not going to kill us. Like, the thing to realize is that when anything is happening in our lives where there are these social things that cause us fear, the thing to remember is that you're going to be okay. Things are going to be just fine, and it's not going to be the end of the world. So if you can relax into it and surrender to this new possibility and accept, hey, no matter what happens, I'm going to be just fine. And that's going to be one of the ways that we can get over this fear. The second thing here is go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. It would really help the channel grow, and I would really appreciate it. Okay, just kidding. Um, the second thing that I want to cover today in emotions is sadness. So, sadness, ultimately, what sadness is it's a gap between your old reality and your new reality. So if your old reality was, hey, you had a girlfriend and things were going great, y'all were going on dates, you were being intimate, all of these nice things, and all of a sudden, let's say the relationship ends, right? So your old reality was up here, and then your new reality is down here. This gap that exists, that is where sadness comes from. And the bigger that gap, the bigger emotional sadness, the bigger sadness that we feel. Okay, so that's what sadness is. If we can identify it, we can fix it. Okay, so how do we fix sadness? Well, the idea, it's very similar to fear actually, is that we just have to surrender to it, relax into the new reality that we find ourselves in. That relationship is no more. That job is no more. That friendship is no more. Maybe let's say even we hurt ourselves, right? We love playing a sport and all of a sudden we injure ourselves in such a way where we're not able to continue to participate. That's your new reality. And it is our responsibility, if we don't want to feel that anxiety, to understand our emotions and to accept it and just to relax into our new reality. And that's how we deal with sadness. The third thing I want to discuss is shame. Okay, so shame is this emotion where there is this thing that's inside us that we know about that we are afraid of somebody else figuring out. And this causes us to hide those things that we're shameful of. things that I've been shameful of the past, smoking lots of weed or taking, other substances to kind of mask fundamental problems in my life where I would just mask over them, with these substances. And I didn't tell anybody. I would hide from them and I would kind of stick to myself on the weekends. And it was just, it was nasty. And ultimately, the way out of shame, first and foremost, is to identify these behaviors that we do that we don't want to tell anybody about. If there are things that we're doing, let's say, just from personal experience, taking drugs, watching pornography, watching YouTube all night, these types of things, if we are doing things that we don't want to tell somebody else about, that is the root cause of shame. And if these things go untreated, they become absolutely toxic. So they kind of need to be handled. If you want to kind of mature, or if we want to mature and we want to grow up, and so one of the things that we can do in terms of shame is actually write down those things that we are shameful of, the things that we don't want to tell anybody about, the things that we may not even want to accept about ourselves. Write them down and maybe read that list. And that's like the introductory version. And if you want to go advanced, if you really want to see some growth, the idea is actually to tell somebody else about them. Tell somebody else about your drug use. Tell somebody else about your pornography use. Tell somebody else about, how you're spending your time. And that is going to be the first step to opening yourselves up to living more, energetically positive and to letting people in. The thing that I used to not realize is that, like, I used to think that if I didn't share my shames with other people, or rather that if I did, that they would judge me, that they would think that I'm weak, that they would think that I'm less of a man, they would think I'm not worthy of respect. But the interesting thing is that when I started to share the things that I found so deeply shameful of myself and my behavior, I actually started to earn more respect. I actually started to earn more trust from those around me and those that I love, which was really unprecedented. I did not think that that was going to happen. So that's basically, we covered fear, we covered sadness, and we covered shame. And there are some things that we can do in those areas. Okay. So now that we have a better idea of threats' role in creating anxieties and some emotions that we can tap into, we build a little self-awareness there, then we can start to overcome those underlying emotions of the anxieties. Um, that's going to get us pretty far. Another thing that can get us much further, there's a difference between learning something and practicing it so much that it becomes an embodiment, it becomes part of who we are. And so that's what I'll be discussing here are some exercises that we can do to help to build to transition this information from our minds and become and learn to embody it into a part of who we are. So these exercises fall into a couple different categories: meditation, breath work, and moving your body, like movement type of things. So the first thing on meditation, excuse me, is just a basic meditation. What meditation is it allows us through conscious effort and practice, to separate ourselves in the moment from our reactions and our thoughts, right? Like ultimately, what you do when you meditate is you practice present state awareness and focus at a time when it really doesn't matter, such that when things do matter, you are able to act more, you can respond the way that you want to, and you don't become so flustered, or we don't become so, upset by these things that happen in life. And so by meditating consistently, what we can do is we can begin to separate ourselves kind of from it's like a first person, third person point of view, or first person, second person. Instead of just being reactive all the time, things can happen, anxieties can happen, and you can step back and say, whoa, how can I respond in this situation? And it is meditation that gives you that strength to do that. Some other things that we can do are fall in the categories of breath work. So there are many, breath exercises that we can do here. Andrew Huberman is phenomenal in this area. But to give a quick primer here, We can do quick things such as the 4-7-8 breath, which is, you breathe in for 4 seconds through the nose, can hold your breath for 7 seconds, and you can breathe through forcibly through your mouth for that extended 8-second period. So this is an exercise that, if done consistently over time, maybe 4 to 6 weeks, if you're doing this every day, expect it to take like 4 to 6 weeks for you to see like real long-term results. And the same with meditation too. You will begin to notice that your anxiety will drop dramatically. You can also do things like lung expanders. So you breathe in again, and the third time, hold for 5 seconds, and a long extended exhale. So this is something, I think this is called the physiological sigh. And what it can do is dramatic, like immediately reduce anxiety like that. I mean, you do a couple of those, like let's say you do 4 of those breaths, immediately you will notice a drop in stress. I mean, like anxiety will start to dissipate very rapidly. And if we do these exercises over time, we can begin to actually cultivate our nervous system can grow and grow stronger. There's also breath of fire or Wim Hof breathing. I'll just go over breath of fire real quick. There are other people, their channels, they go much more in depth on this. Though breath of fire is you're going to take a breath in and out to kind of calm yourself. And then once you're in that calm state, you're going to sit up straight and you're going to forcibly exhale using your diaphragm only. And you're going to make a quick pumping motion like this with your diaphragm. So it's and if you use your diaphragm like that, like this exercise, it not only puts your body under some stress, but it actually wakes you up. And the idea with some of these exercises is that if we can strengthen our nervous system during these very focused mindfulness or breath activities, then that focus and that anxiety reduction can actually map onto other areas of life. Let's say in a negotiation or a fight with a really important person in your life. Let's say you go to your boss and you're asking for a raise. These are anxious situations where if you've done the work beforehand and you begin to embody these skills, then you're not going to be so anxious in the moment. So that can be extremely useful. And then quickly, just in terms of other areas of life, um, exercise, join a gym, join a team sport, basketball or skateboarding or something that challenges you physically, particularly skateboarding or team sports. Learning to work with other people in these high stakes situations can map extremely well when the stakes are not so high, but they still have that anxious kind of feed into them. And so I would highly, I mean, I've been in sports my whole life and I absolutely love it. It's a really, really honestly one of the joys of my life, and it can really add a lot. So that's meditation, breath work, and like movement and exercise. So I hope this has been a good kind of primer on particularly anxiety and threats role in anxiety, understanding how our emotions kind of play into that and the importance of understanding our emotions to dealing with anxiety. And also, I hope you enjoyed the kind of primer on some exercises that we can do to begin to build that strength of our nervous system to combat that anxiousness, over time. So if you found this video helpful or informative, go ahead and absolutely smash the like button, hit the subscribe button, the bell notification if you're already subscribed to get notifications, and also leave a comment if something I said here made you think about something or was helpful in any way. Go ahead and leave a comment. If there's something I can do to improve, let me know. I'm very open to feedback and I'd love to hear it. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a nice day.